In this video, guys, we're going to look at the dangers of a high hit rate strategy. Stay tuned. Hey guys, a warm welcome to you. All right, so a high hit rate sounds like a really good trading strategy, right? High hit rate meaning that you're making money consistently on each trade, as opposed to the risk reward ratio being skewed in your favor, i.e. you might lose 10, but the one you win, you make 20 times your risk, is a profitable strategy. A high hit rate is something that, okay, you're making, maybe you're winning 70%, 80%, 90% of your trades, and I'm kind of using these numbers as an exaggeration here, but you're making your money the most of the time, and then you very rarely lose. Now, the risk reward ratio is not going to be that high. You're not going to make like 10 times your risk on those sort of trades. Maybe you're making a one time, or if it's high enough, it might even be a fraction of your risk. If you think of like a casino model, for example, depending on which number you're betting on roulette. But the point is that what's the dangers of this? Well, the biggest danger that I see for people when they're trading something that's got a high hit rate is complacency. And an example of a high hit rate strategy would be selling significantly out of the money call options or put options. So if you're in a bull market, if you're selling well out of the money put options, you're basically selling in downside insurance. And when it's chugging along, you're going to constantly make money. And selling an option means that you're basically selling the premium. I kind of liken it to somebody, let's say you've got a tall skyscraper in your city and you're selling fire insurance for that. You're getting however much that is, who knows what that costs. Let's say it costs them 20 grand a year to insure that. I don't know what order of magnitude that is, but let's say it costs them 20 grand a year to insure that against fire risk. Now, you're receiving £20,000 a year very nicely. You're not going to go on for multiple years, you go on 50 years, 60 years. Then all of a sudden, the year that thing catches fire, you're on the hook for whatever it may be, 200 million quid, which isn't great. So selling options is kind of a little bit like that. It works and works and works and works and works. And the same with any of these high hit rate strategies, like another one would be perhaps scaling in a martingale fashion, which is deadly enough as it is if it's not managed correctly during some kind of mean reversion quiet period. So mean reversion trade, mean reversion type market environment, martingale-ing, that's probably going to work for you a lot of the time, but the time it doesn't is the time you get hit. So let's go back to the point. The point of this video is, what's the dangers of this? So if you're in a strategy that seems to have a high hit rate, the danger is complacency. You don't see the hidden risk in the strategy you're employing. You don't see the dangers behind the scenes, under the bonnet. All you see is the nice shiny surface of the wins. You get a high hit rate. You're not aware, and you get complacent with kind of the underlying danger of the strategy, which always comes. There's no free lunch, guys, in the market. You've always got to offset one thing or another. If you've got a high hit rate, you're going to have a chance of a catastrophic loss, because that's just the way it is. You can't have a high hit rate and not have that. So this is kind of always going to be there. And the danger is that you're kind of churning away, you're making money, you see your account growing nicely, everything looks good, but you don't see there's really actually a serious danger under there of you getting caught out. So how do you combat this? Well, first of all, I don't know if I'm a huge fan of high hit rate strategies anyway. I think that they look good on the surface, but ultimately I think that you better off, this is your personal opinion, I know some people are making a very good living to kind of selling options or using high hit rate strategies. From a retail trader's perspective, I think you're better off dialing down the probability of success and dialing up the risk reward ratio to give you a bit more of a neutral aspect, because then you are faced with loss regularly, and so you are able to manage loss. Because as we know with anything, guys, the more you practice something, the more that it becomes normal, the more you desensitize yourself emotionally to the loss, but also the more you deal with the loss from an operations perspective, whether that's a stop loss, whether that's scaling out of position, however you deal with it. And so the more exposed you are to that vulnerability, the better prepared you are if that extreme vulnerability comes. And we've seen stuff recently where people who have had these high hit rate strategies have got hammered by unusual market conditions because they're not seasoned, they're not protected, they don't understand how to manage the risk. They might have it in theory, but then it hits them like a freight train and they're just stunned, they don't know what to do, and it's way out of the kind of concept that they thought it was going to be, and they're in trouble. Whereas if they had experienced loss throughout the year or whatever it was, they would have recognized to manage it and they would have seen weak spots. It's just like when we see, nations playing war games, right? They play these war games because they want to spot weak spots in their defenses or attack or whatever they're doing that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do unless they were doing it in a real world environment. So these war games come out, they kind of do them, they run the war games, and they go, oh, you know what, actually it was a weak spot. There was one, wasn't there, not long ago, where they're doing the aircraft carriers, the US doing the aircraft carrier war games, wherever it was, and I believe it was Sweden or something, basically managed to get close enough to the aircraft carriers to effectively win the war game. They would have been able to fire a torpedo into the aircraft carrier and sink it, and that's pretty significant. Bear in mind there's like 6,000 people on that aircraft carrier, so that's something that wouldn't have been able to be seen if you hadn't put yourself under that stress and on that test. Now, of course, in the military, they're not going to war all the time to do it, that's why they do the war games, but in trading, we can give ourselves loss, we can put ourselves under stress so that we know, okay, there's a weakness there, I didn't get caught out that time, but I recognize the weakness and that could wipe me out. How do I adjust the strategy? How do I adjust the portfolio? What do I need to put into place so that if this happens, I need to not make it into a catastrophic loss? So that's the trouble with high hit rate strategies. You don't get to see the other side of the coin often until it's too late. So be careful of that. If you've got a high hit rate strategy, watch out for the complacency. All right, guys, see you in the next one. Take care, whatever you're doing. Bye-bye.